But I think it's because we come in hot and aggressive, usually in the same manner. Like,
That's
if
true.
one of us is hot and aggressive about something, usually the other one's behind them lighting the pitchfork. Welcome to the Workhorse Podcast, where we dig deep into the grit, passion, and strategy behind building a successful rural business. We're your hosts.
I'm Kendall Ballantyne, owner of Central Park Farms and Marketing for Farmers.
And I'm Jessica Garza, owner of Moose Valley Ranch and founder of Market in the Mountains.
This podcast is for hardworking female farmers and rural entrepreneurs who are ready to turn their dreams into thriving businesses. From deep diving business strategies that actually work to balancing farm family life and everything in between.
We're here to give you practical tools, candid insights, and a healthy dose of community support. If you're looking for women who actually cheer you on, are willing to tell you the hard truths, and that understand how much it can throw off your day when the cows get out, you're in the right spot.
This podcast is for the doers, the women who don't stay in one spot for too long, for the workhorses.
Super excited today. We are doing something new that we have not gotten to do yet. We had to give you guys a little bit of time to catch up on 1, what is the Workhorse Podcast? 2, who are we? And 3, the fact that we have a spot for you to drop anonymous questions to. So we talked about that a couple weeks ago. The link for it will be available in the show notes today. But we already have questions, good questions. And I'm dying because when we did a quick glance through, our goal for this is that this is like you get to sit in the room with us off the cuff, get an answer, no rehearsed 5-step answers here. Like, this is just going to be really real and really raw for us to do. So we just did a brief read through of them. And I'm already dying to know which one of you sent in the questions.
I know question number 1 had me just howling. It feels like the perfect time for this question, and I have no idea who it came from. So if you submitted the question that we talked about first, thank you. That was so good.
Yeah, you can let us know. I mean, if you're brave enough to, you don't have to in any way, shape, or form. These are meant to be anonymous. We can't even see what email sends them in. So what we're going to do is we're going to read down. I just took them all and dumped them into a document so we can go through them. We're going to go kind of rapid fire. So we'll move through them and see where this goes. So I hope you enjoy a wild ride today. And then if you've got your own question you want to send through, make sure you check out the show notes for that link. We're going to do this again, I think. I mean, I'm already excited just reading through them really quickly. So this has got to happen again. There was some good ones. And we may not get to all of them today. So if you did already send in a question and you don't see your question answered, there's quite a few. So if we don't get to it, just know it's probably still on our list. And unless it's like, I don't know how an anonymous question would be super close to another one, but otherwise we'll keep working our way through them.
Yeah.
Okay, without further ado, because we're going to get juicy today. First question. Working together with different views must create challenges. What are things the two of you disagree on, and what are some trigger things you stay away from? As a woman looking for my person to pair with, how do I find my Jessica to my Kendall?
I feel like this question comes at such a weird time, being business partners, being friends from 2 different countries that are currently not totally always getting along.
Yeah, that's been rough to experience, the sort of political unrest that I think is currently happening in the world, particularly between our 2 countries. And with things that are directly tied to our jobs, this doesn't feel like something in a, third world that doesn't really impact either of us. So that definitely has come up more than once lately.
Yeah, and I think because for those who don't know, I'm Canadian, Jess is American. So right now there's like unrest in that space. And I think for me, we kind of try to be respectful that we're obviously both welcome to have differing opinions, and we're both able to be patriotic for our own countries and things like that, and can hold space for. I feel like Jess has done a good job of holding space for my opinion on just how it's impacted my business so far, which I think has been helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think there becomes like a very fundamental difference at the end of the day, and sometimes we do have to just walk away from the conversation. And there has been times where I think we've both gotten off the phone or Zoom or whatever it was and just kind of like that was a lot.
Yes.
Like, in whatever capacity, I think that there's like this just really heavy feeling sometimes. And I know that I feel sometimes like I will be trying to communicate something and it's like, okay, this is clearly not going. Like I'm clearly not capable of communicating what's in my head right now. And it's better to just take a pause and walk away.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we don't butt heads a lot. I think we both have very strong personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And we both, in this space together where we work, is that we really both have certain strengths. We have very different businesses, so we don't often we bring different life experiences to the business, so we don't typically have a lot of like toe stepping on, I don't think.
Yeah,
Do you think? You gave like this really long pause that I hope they don't edit out because you left
they
me
shouldn't.
hanging of like,
No,
oh,
I was
am I walking all over your toes?
I was just kind of thinking about how I do feel like there is some overlap sometimes where we just see circumstances through different filters. And so
Yes.
we may have different opinions on ways you can spin it, ways you could do it, things that might work, things that won't work. Like I think it tends to happen when we're like spitballing stuff. Because generally you're right. If it's a strength of one of ours and we know that, like it's very easy to just step back from conflicting or stepping on someone's toes, I think is a good way to say that. I think it comes down to when we are like throwing mud at the wall, if for lack
Yeah.
of a better, I'm really struggling with like how to articulate that there are times where it's like just two completely different ways to look at something, neither of which is wrong,
Yes.
neither of which is, and it's almost like we need that third person in the room when that's happening because it's going to be them that's the deciding factor of which one gets executed, not
Yeah.
because one idea is not good or one perspective's. It's just like we see things so wildly different sometimes. I hope it's helpful for the girls that we coach or at retreat with because they get this sort of like, you can go either of these directions, like pick which one feels right for your heart and your situation because we're not in your shoes, but like here's two
Yeah.
wildly different ways to look at it. But
Yeah,
sometimes that's
because
hard to articulate in like back
yeah.
and forth
And
conversation.
because our businesses are so different, it makes it so that it's easier to kind of pick which method works better for which business and have that kind of secondary opinion. Now, certainly we've had times and like what pops into my head and when we were kind of quickly looking at these questions ahead of time and I was just like howling because it was so good, is market. When we had
Mhm.
a dust up at market.
Mhm.
And that was just like I remember CJ because I mean, bless CJ, he's so good at that. Of like, and we had a little thing, and then it was like, as soon as you walked away, CJ was like, "Oh, I hope you guys are okay." And I was like, "I think I just need a snack." And he went and got me a snack because I
Yeah, that
knew that, like, I knew you were in, like, that's your baby, that's your business, that's your market, and it's incredibly successful. And I can only imagine from my own experiences how much goes into that for you all year round. And so there was like, I understood this wasn't going to be something we were going to hash out in that moment. And it was something that like were under a lot of stress. I probably needed a snack. And we just needed to move along.
I really struggle. It's probably one of the hardest parts with market is that I hold so much in my own head just by nature of like how it's organized and how I built it and how I have grown it. And so it gets really and I do struggle with this a lot in not even just in our relationship, but in other ones of everything in my head makes sense a very specific way. And like when I'm saying it, it makes sense to me how I say it. And then I don't understand when people don't get it. Like, or
Yes.
don't like, or it doesn't click. Don't get it sounded, sorry, kind of dismissive.
No. I
But
didn't
like,
take it that way at all.
I get, and so then you add in like the lack of sleep and the pressure of like 15 more cars are waiting for me to come check them into their booth. And I know I have a tendency to just default to this like, situation because in my brain it's crystal clear and like why can you not just peel off my head and like listen and then put my head back on, like, but that's not possible.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
we're
Like,
really like we're good at stepping back and giving space instead of like taking it personally and like leaning in very aggressively. I think we
Which I
see in
feel
each
like is
other.
surprising because we both have a come in hot aggressive attitude. So I actually, and Jay has said that before, that he's very surprised that our two personalities in the come in hot and aggressive make sense together.
But I think it's because we come in hot and aggressive usually in the same manner. Like,
That's
if
true.
one of us is hot and aggressive about something, usually the other one's behind them lighting the pitchfork.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
I'm
Yeah.
riding it on with you.
Yeah.
Here's the lit pitchfork. Let's throw it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the other one is behind us cheering because we tend to share the same values and we're driven by a lot of the same like core and intrinsic beliefs in our businesses and how we handle relationships. And I think people that have listened to the podcast have kind of heard that through just the experiences of hard times with other people, what that looks like in partnerships. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have really paralleled, I think, in our journeys that why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because I'm just picturing in my head, like, I don't, maybe we stay in our own lanes and have navigated that because we don't want to dust up with another one of ourselves.
That could be it. I'm sure some guru somewhere would love to unpack the previous
there's a
trauma
therapist
and
right now.
Yep. If we have a therapist listening, who knows? I don't know if we're at that level yet, but I think that probably a lot of it is we recognize a lot of things in each other. And so it's also very easy to understand. I can almost watch something come across your face and I'm like, oh, that's what she's feeling right now. Like, even if it's directed at me or if it's in a situation that doesn't have anything to do with me, I'm like, oh, I feel sometimes like I'm almost like I imagine what a twin sister would feel like.
Yeah.
You almost get the phenomenon yourself. And so you have a lot of respect for whatever is occurring, if that makes sense. That's not really okay. So some triggers we stay away from though.
Yeah.
So we don't have a ton that we disagree on. We have different perspectives, but fundamentally not a lot, I would say, that we disagree on. Triggers, politics.
Yeah. Like, we probably don't want to talk about politics. Full disclaimer, we may have had to edit this because we triggered.
And I think that is an indicator of us, though, is trying to hold space for everybody to feel safe, welcome, worthy of their own opinions. That's really important to both of us. And you know what? Like, I think more people should be like that. So I'm okay with it.
And that's really, I would say that there's not much that triggers each other in this. I just think that we know when, what?
Hanger.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking about that.
I need snacks all the time.
As you were talking about the snack at market, and I'm like, we both do a really good job of reminding the other one that maybe it's time to get a snack. Because
you sometimes just bring me like a little grazing plate and you just slide it towards me when we're working on something. And it's probably because I'm just getting a little testy. I need a snack.
But a lot of our stuff revolves around food.
Yeah.
So I would say a trigger is to stay away from getting hangry. Like, we prepare for road trips with extra snacks.
Yes.
We plan our stops out for food. Our husbands check in with each other and ourselves to make sure that we're eating, because when we don't, it is bad.
Jay and I had a little dust up yesterday. And then earlier when we were between recording, he came and delivered some mangoes to me. He went to the grocery store. That was his suck up to me as snacks.
I mean,
well, technically I got flowers and snacks.
What? I'm solo momming it up right now, and I feel like flowers would be really nice, but that's not going to happen. I would actually prefer Uber Eats for dinner. That's what I would prefer.
It's not going to happen because we're on to question number 2.
Okay.
I feel like you need to ask this one because it's a question being asked to me.
Yeah, specifically to, which is totally fine, you guys. So feel free to send it. If it's not both of us, we're just going to play this game. What strategies did Kendall implement to quit farmers markets?
First of all, I prepared to quit farmers markets while I was still actively at farmers markets and not preparing to actually leave them. So just super quick, marketing my email list to make sure I absolutely had access to the shoppers that I was already selling to. implemented an e-commerce online store and had really started promoting that while I was at the markets to get people used to having the transaction happening online versus just relying on transactions actually happening at the farmers market. And I also launched delivery prior to leaving the markets so that in essence, it sucked because I was kind of competing against myself. They could have ordered online and picked up from the farmer's market, but I really wanted people to get used to the concept of ordering online and knowing that we had delivery so that when I was in front of people, I could start promoting that. And it allowed me to test that option before it was my only option. That way I could kind of iron out the kinks and get all of that going. But I really ultimately, the entire time I was at markets, I was constantly not promoting the fact that I was going to be leaving markets, but promoting other sales channels within my business and really developing those sales channels so that when it was time to leave, and I was leaving selling at farmers markets as one of the highest grossing revenue producing vendors in the province. So it was a big deal when I left markets. Like it was a lot of revenue on the table that I was walking away from. So just making sure I really had done a good job of securing those customers and my lines of communication with them before I left and long before I left. And then we just kind of built out our delivery routes, like our delivery regions based on where we had been attending farmers markets and continued to really market ourselves. We took a little dip, but it wasn't bad. It was absolutely sustainable. We took a tiny little dip and then picked it right back up. And now our sales are far higher than the farmer's market without having to pack up and go and sell at market.
I'm going to insert shameless plug here because that is something that question comes up a lot in our group coaching. Anytime that it's sort of like a topic we're doing sort of dovetails into that or relates to that experience. Kendall teaches on this extensively inside of our group coaching, the Workhorse Collective. We'll throw the link to that in the show notes too. And this wasn't meant to be a sales pitch, but just to know that we know there's going to be some really specific questions about educational things. We're probably not going to be able to give you the whole kit and caboodle in a 5-minute question and answer. But that is something that comes up quite a bit. And I have loved hearing that journey because as a market organizer, that's like you feel like that's your like the bird launches, like they came, they did the markets, they succeed, and now they're ready to move to the next step. So I love hearing about your journey with that.
I got the next question for you.
Okay.
Well, it's not directed just at you, but I'm gonna read it for you because I feel like this one you'll have a very specific. It says, I started my lavender farm 3 years ago and I'm finally breaking even. Interject, congratulations, because that is huge.
Yes,
so
get a bottle of champagne.
Let's celebrate that. I'm finally breaking even, but my husband still calls it my, in quotes, expensive hobby. How do I get my family to see this as a legitimate business without constantly having to defend myself?
Two initial thoughts here. One, you don't get them to see it as a without having to defend yourself. Like that to me sometimes is just an impossible wish that you really want them to get it. Why don't they get it? They're just not going to. So sort of accept reality there. Sorry if that was a little harsh. The other thing is I really enjoy the moment when you slap down your financial documents at the end of the year and you show that you made enough to cover the mortgage. You sold more than the hay. You grossed more than your primary income. Whatever the metric is that kind of wows them. I think that there is a lot of strength in, especially with men. And I say this because I love my dad, but he does not give a flying fig about emotions, satisfaction, heart projects. Like he does not care. But if I sit down and I show him the financials that say, hey, look, with one weekend, we grossed more than the hay profits were from the entire ranch for the whole year. All of a sudden that man listens. And it's not such a cute hobby. But I say this with almost 6 years in, lots of success, lots of very like visible success, monetary success, and they still make the comments. So
yeah,
sorry.
And I started CPF as me, and Jay was in the background running his own businesses and like kind of helping with some of the farming end of it. Like just,
okay, but your
I didn't know.
Can't say this because you pay their paychecks. Maybe that's the point that they can't do this is when their paycheck is dependent upon it.
So, but I need to say that is a real thing that happens where it's hard to justify the amount of time you're spending on social media when it's not making money or just breaking even. And it's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't get the process, but it does if you keep doing the work and you keep showing up and you keep building that business. If you're already breaking even and working towards making a profit for this year, then I say use it as a motivator. Because honestly, like using it as a motivator and remembering that you're not going to be able to convince everybody. Just like for me, I have so many family members who do not buy from me, who do not support me, who I've got friends that don't buy or support me financially, and that's okay. And it's not their job to believe in me. I mean, it's ideal that they do, obviously, but I'm not going to allow somebody else putting their thoughts onto my business. If I am going to, it's going to be for motivation, not for me having to justify why I'm believing or having the dreams that I have I'll always bet on myself. And so just keep pushing through and give them a reason that they don't need that justification anymore.
Also, I will say this, men are very unaware. I feel like they don't have a lot of situational awareness in relationship, especially with entrepreneur women. So I would want to fire back at this person of, have you told your husband that that really bothers you? Because sometimes
Yes.
they're in a habit of doing it. And it was an expensive hobby when you started. So he maybe wasn't far off the mark there. But have you really sat him down and looked him in the eyes, like slapped the phone out of his hand, eye contact, nothing else going on, and said, this is really hurting me when you do this? Because sometimes it takes that slap up on the forehead for them to, oh, I didn't know. Even though you're like, I've cried the last 3 times it happened and you said this and you didn't know, you think it's very clear, and to them it's not. So I would also say communicate that with them.
And I wish I had read this question before I had my sit down with Jay, because I'm curious. I feel
We
like
can do
we
another one.
must, but I feel like because CJ, I feel like is very supportive. And I'm not saying Jay's not supportive. Jay is absolutely supportive. I feel like CJ's super supportive. I feel like at some point there probably was a conversation like that between me and Jay at the beginning. I think probably, I'm going to assume. And that's because at the beginning, like, I was taking my corporate career money and putting it into the farm. And like the farm wasn't making money at the beginning. And I'm sure that there was probably something that was like, I was always on social media and always trying to do these things. And it was just very unconventional for the way that Jay viewed agriculture. So I'm sure we would have had some of those conversations in the past. And how I reacted to it, I don't remember now, but I know it would have, for me, fueled that motivation to, instead of just having to explain it to him, I tend to be somebody who wants to show him.
I will also say that I think the older they are, the harder it is to convince them outside of very standard metric measurements of things that you are successful. And that's where the money part comes in with my dad, is that's the only way.
Yeah.
Even if I was like strolling through the fields, happy as a clam, telling him how fulfilled I was, he would not see it as a success or as a business unless he saw numbers on a paper. And I think that's partly his generation, and that doesn't help things.
And you can also look at those figures. Like, you don't necessarily need to be making the kind of income that facilitates hiring your entire family and things like that, where Central Park Farms is now. But looking at your growth percentage, like, I know that's always something that Jay and I talk about a lot. That's the figure he really leans on that from me. So he'll come and he'll say, like, how much better are we doing this February than last February? And then I'll go in and I'll pull that. It's not, for us, it's not always what is the total dollar value. It's what are we seeing growth wise. So you may have just started breaking even, but what did your growth look like from last year? Because if you can continue to capitalize on that growth, like Central Park Farms, our focus is on a growth percentage. And I want to see that year after year after year. And so I'd like to look at that data. And when we weren't making money at the very beginning, when we were first doing this, I was looking at, like, did I grow a little bit from last month? Did I get some more email subscribers, some more social media followers? And most importantly, did I get more sales? Did I figure out how to reduce some of my expenses? Because sometimes that's it too. And I would just look at those like I wasn't always looking at how much money did I make at the end? Because in the beginning, that's tough when you're trying to develop up a business. But looking at that growth percentage can be a nice indication if you continue to do what you're doing, will you be making money next year?
I love that.
Running a rural business isn't for the faint of heart. Whether you're growing crops, raising livestock, or building a small town business, you know the challenges and the rewards better than anyone.
That's why we created the Workhorse Collective, a monthly coaching membership designed for rural business owners and farmers who want practical marketing strategies, real community, and results that actually matter. Gain expert guidance and live sessions tailored to your unique challenges. Connect with other driven business owners who share your values. Get professional feedback to fine-tune your marketing and grow your business. Join on your terms with flexible options that fit even the busiest schedules.
This isn't fluff or theory. It's hands-on support from people who live and breathe rural businesses, just like you.
Visit the link in today's show notes to learn more and become part of a community that's working smarter, not harder, to grow thriving rural businesses. The Workhorse Collective, real tools, real results, and real connection.
Because when rural businesses succeed, our communities thrive.
Okay, I'll do the next one. Last month, I found myself crying in the chicken coop. Oh, man.
I didn't read that one.
Because I was so overwhelmed juggling homeschooling, farm chores, and trying to build a business. Please tell me I'm not the only one who's had a breakdown in a barn.
I mean, Jay came to my office probably like 6 weeks ago and started to talk to me. And I put my head into my hands and started crying. He was sitting. So the way my office is set up, my desk, we've got like this big, we call it the big comfy chair. It's the one, if you see this on Instagram, it's the one I'm sitting in when I podcast. And he was sitting in this chair. And I just like put my face into my hands and started crying. And I can't for the life of me remember, we're onboarding a new bookkeeper. And I was massively overwhelmed with the entire process of doing that. And I was upset because I don't have help, all the things. And I just felt super overwhelmed. So it doesn't matter what scale of business you're at, whether you have a business that you're doing part-time while working full-time, what it is. I mean, it can be really overwhelming. And sometimes you just need a good cry.
Yeah, I don't have I guess I do have a barn to break down in, but I break down in the bottom of the shower. That's just my safe place. I don't think I've ever not heard from someone, no matter what level of business you're in, because I will say, I think in the beginning, I felt like I was going to reach this crescendo, this threshold where things were all of a sudden going to just be wonderful. And instead, what I've realized growing is that the only thing that changes is your capacity for overwhelm and your ability to create more challenges for yourself to overcome, especially if you kind of have that like entrepreneur drive, I think, and that type of personality where you're not just like 100% content with the way things always have been. I don't know that I will ever stop getting overwhelmed, because as soon as I level up and I've got a handle on it, I add something else. And fatal flaw, like I'll be self-aware enough to know that's a fatal flaw, but like, first of all, find somebody you can talk. If it's us, cool, go leave us another anonymous question. We are happy to slide into our DMs. But find women that are being really truthful. If you feel that way and you really feel that alone, please reach out, because you need to be in community with women that are willing to be honest with you. And I truly can't think of a woman who hasn't had a breakdown lately. So I'm like kind of worried about your support system.
Yes, I would say support system for sure. And I think that, like, I totally agree with you, Jess. My capacity to understand my overwhelm now has increased as the business has grown. And I know that I was overwhelmed when it was just me. And I'm overwhelmed sometimes when it's, me and 10. I think now my overwhelm tends to stem from the fact that no matter what happens, I know I have so many people financially relying on me. So there's that. It's just the overwhelm's just different now than it was back then, but it still exists. And I absolutely agree with finding a support system. I think the longer you're doing this, at least in my experience, the more I realize that as long as I continue to make decisions, I can make my way out the other side of any problem, which helps me. when I feel super overwhelmed, I try to sit down and just break it down. I will brain dump all the things that are going on in my head onto a piece of paper so that I can break it down into some tangible things that I need to accomplish or decisions that I need to make so that I can kind of soul search my way through it. Sometimes that means a voice memo to Jess where I, run an idea by her, where I call Jay and get Jay's opinion on something within our business and figure out how to get out the other side of it.
And I think truly don't be afraid to set something down either.
Yes.
Homeschooling, farm chores, building a business. So by homeschooling, I'm going to assume you've got a family. Set it down. If it's not paying your bills, if it's not necessary for survival and you are so overwhelmed that you can't see your way out of it, like if it's, I guess I'm kind of assuming the worst, but that's sort of my personality here is like, let me give you some permission to set it down for a minute. Set
Absolutely.
it down, figure out what the next right step is, make some decisions, but also like prioritize. I love a list of priorities. Like, would you put homeschooling as more important than the farm chores? Okay. So that means that we're going to set down, or maybe we're not going to expand as many animals, or we're going to sell off a species that isn't profitable. Like we love the ducks, but if the ducks are adding to our farm chores, we're going to cut the ducks before we send the kids back to public school. There's that sort of analysis that has to, but you can't do that when you're crying in the barn. You've got to feel it, take a deep breath, and then prioritize, set down what you can't handle, make your life easier, even if it feels like that's not what you really want to do. I think there's some tough love moments with yourself to focus in on what's super important. What do you absolutely have to do to keep the lights on, keep the kids going, keep your marriage together, versus would it be nice to scale your business to this certain point? Yes. But if it's taking too much from you, scale it slower.
And get really comfy saying no. I had an email come in last week asking me to sit on yet another nonprofit board. And immediately when it came in, I knew that there was absolutely no way that I had capacity for that. I put it through the filter that I make my decisions through. Does it move the needle in my business? Does it fill my cup? Neither of which that specific situation was going to do for me. And so I didn't even give it a chance. Like, they probably thought it was awkward how fast the no came back to them, because it ping-ponged into my inbox and I was bashing that ball back over the
she didn't even read the email.
Didn't. It was a really long email and I got absolutely the necessities in it. And I responded back and I was like, thank you so much for thinking of me. At this time, I'm not taking on any more commitments to my time. My youngest is graduating this year and I am focusing whatever free time I have on my family. And it was just like, thanks for thinking of me. And they responded right away and said, thank you so much. I totally understand. My youngest just graduated last year. Like, it was just very, very easy. I put it on the fact that I want to spend that free time I have with Jagger because he's in his last year in high school and I want to make it to the games and I want to do those things. And if I say yes to that, I'm saying no to something else in my life that is more important to me. So I have to get really comfortable. And most women, we tend to be people pleasers. We tend to say yes to things. And then we have resentment against that afterwards. So if you feel overwhelmed, really try to put it through a filter for yourself when you are making decisions of whether or not that's going to be something that moves the needle in your business, helps your family, fills your cup, and make those decisions from there. I feel like we're on to the next question. And I feel like you're going to really like
this. Is a roller coaster. I'm like, I don't know which way we're going. So I'm just going to take another drink of my Red Bull here. It's only 6:30 at night while we're recording and I
feel like this is a good one. I moved to a rural area and started my farm. And while I love the lifestyle, I sometimes feel like I never truly belong in this community as an outsider. How long did it take before you felt accepted in your rural community?
I was born here and I don't fit in. Like, I'm probably the worst person to ask. Oh, sorry. And different communities are different. I will say that. I was born and raised in this rural area and I don't feel accepted here. And so maybe I don't have the best.
Okay. I want to say, so that you don't feel alone in that, is that one of the things that we get the most inside of group coaching. So every month we have like a community chat session where the women just get together and they all kind of share where they're at. It's just a really like cool, Jess, takes care of that. She facilitates it. inside of our retreats, always, 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 I have women that are saying that to me. Jess is having women that are saying that to them. And it's just like, I don't feel like any of them understand, anybody in my community understands what I'm doing, what my dreams are, what I'm chasing. The women at my kids, baseball games they're not at the same place. They're not trying to chase the same things. That's not uncommon. So it means that we need to look outside of that to try to find those connections. I mean, Jess and I are 2.5 hours away from each other when I'm at the ranch at our like small town community. And when I'm at our farm, which is in the big community, we're 6.5, no, probably more, probably 7.5 hours from each other. So like you can create relationships in other areas that fulfill you and that help you and support you. And I mean, I get it. I still don't feel super in with my rural community. I mean, I'm not there full time, so that doesn't help. I'm not there full time, and then I come from Vancouver, and that's like, whoo.
Yeah,
like
that's like moving here from Seattle.
Yes. So yes, it is exactly like it. It's like living in Seattle and then going to your small town on the weekends and then trying to be fully integrated into the community. It's a little bit rough, but I just kind of have continued to try to search out different organizations to be involved with and different, things like that so that I can find a couple people in town. Very few, I would say that I don't necessarily have a lot in common with the vast majority of people in my small town just because of what we've decided to do for work or the scope in which we operate.
I think that's maybe the harder part of it is when you're in a rural community, there's very limited options for interacting with other women and family that look like yours just because the numbers are already so small. And so you're running that as a business, that alone sets you then in an even smaller population. And then you add in any personality conflicts or just like your kids are at different ages. There are some women I would love to have closer relationships with, but their kids are graduating or have graduated in our area. And so we just simply don't run in the same circle. We're not at the same activities. We're not at the same school drop-off times because it is easiest to find friends in places that you're already in. I feel like that's why, like when I was going to spin class all the time and you asked me who my close friends would be, it would have been the girls at spin. I don't hardly talk to any of them anymore because guess what? I'm not going to, I should, but I'm not going to spin class. And how quickly that drops off because it's not a convenient friend. So I think there's some different ways to connect in and out of your community. If you haven't tried doing some activities, volunteering, I also say proceed with caution coming from the law enforcement perspective. There are some people in the community that I would be glad for you to take a little bit slower time to get to know and get a real read on how they are and how they behave than you stepping right into a deep relationship, trusting them and not realizing that everyone else around you knows why they're the way that they are. So there might be a little blessing in disguise there of getting a chance to really get to know what's in and around there. But I don't feel like I am accepted. I don't feel like I belong. Sorry.
Yeah. So I know. I wish I had like a really great, sometimes it happens. And sometimes we feel like we don't belong when really it's not. Sometimes we focus so much on how others are perceiving us and put too much weight on that as well. But
yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it too. Because a lot of times it's not that they're deliberately ignoring you. They just don't have the space in their life for you.
Yes.
Like people's lives are already busy and you're trying to come into it. And it's like they're not trying to not invite you or not include you. They just haven't thought of it. Or I don't know. Got to be the brave one first.
I'm going to consolidate a couple of these questions because I feel like a number of you have asked a very similar question. And it's just on the topic, Jess, of how to show up on social media confidently. One says, I hide behind my products because I'm so camera shy. How do I show up confidently?
That's a hard one. I want to know what you don't feel confident about.
I didn't used to show up confidently online.
I'm just delusional enough. I don't know that I ever didn't just show up. Like I just knew that you had to do it. And so I think I just jumped off the deep end.
Yeah.
If it's like a physical thing, if you don't feel like you look good online, that's what I'm curious about is like, dang, I wish, man, we should require that they add details. There should be
Yeah.
like an automatic kickback, add more
Yeah.
details, please. Because if it's that, like, go get your hair done, get some lashes, go buy some new makeup. I don't know.
Also, there is a lot of power in showing up exactly how you are because you find community that way. I don't know. I just look
True.
sometimes
True.
at these like accounts where everything is freaking perfect and it's so unrelatable for me. I want to see the woman showing up with like her kind of messy kitchen and just like doing the thing and like confidently showing up. Cause I do get that a lot in one-on-ones where we're starting to talk about, showing up online and somebody will say like, I feel kind of like too old to be on social media, or I don't love the way that I look on social media, or I just feel like I've got nothing to say. And it's like, I felt really uncomfortable when I first started showing my face on social media. I remember vividly, and this would have been like 10 years ago. I had previous to Instagram and having video content, I had Facebook page, I had operated another business, I had a blog and things like that. So I was really good at showing up and creating content, but not necessarily content that I was speaking into camera, which was really weird for me at the beginning. I remember being at farmers markets and going behind the building that the farmers market was at to record a video. And I remember I would hold my phone really low and I'd kind of talk quietly because I didn't want to take up space. I didn't want people looking at me from their booths at the market and seeing me have my hand out, like confidently talking into camera. I would have never walked through the market while talking on my phone into camera. Are you kidding me? I was very good at or okay at showing up when no one was looking. And then I started getting people that would, comment to me at the farmer's market or send me DMs saying, oh man, I just love following your account. I love seeing what you're sharing. And I started to realize that holding myself back or allowing myself to be too insecure to show up not only doesn't help my business, which in turn doesn't help my family, but it also makes I was empowering other women to show up as they were too by showing up myself. And there was power in that. And it really helped me gain some of that community that I was longing for myself. And it made it so that our customers really felt connected to us. And once I started seeing that return, it really snowballed for me. And now I will confidently walk anywhere with a phone in my hand talking into it.
Well, and a little tough love if you are doing something where you feel like you need to show up online, get comfortable with being uncomfortable doing it, because there's
Yeah.
going to be so many things along this process that you're going to be uncomfortable doing that you need to do for this to be a success for you. So, I mean, cut the excuses. I just love a little self-care. I always
Yeah.
feel better if my hair is freshly done. I always feel better if it's a cute jacket. But I mean, I love the real. I think especially in the AI, like there are accounts apparently now where you can't even tell that they're not a real person,
Yeah,
but
that's
they're
scary to me.
absolutely like the photos are AI generated and the account is actually not a real person. And people are sending them money and I mean, it's just really weird to me. So I think there is the draw to the human side of things. But I also just think you got to get a little uncomfortable and just start doing it. And it gets better. And listen,
Gets so
we
much
all
better.
cringe at the beginning. Like if I go back to the content I was making 4 years ago, oh, no, thank you. We all cringe over how we started. But the important thing is we started and we kept going and we got a heck of a lot better. But you got to start.
I made a reel on that exact topic and I went and pulled old videos that I had shared.
No.
Oh my God. The filter that I used there for a while, my hair was like highlighter yellow. Like what? I pay too much. Don't look now because my hair appointment's next week. But I pay too much money on my dye job to have that highlighter hair. I was mortified going back on those videos. I was so embarrassed. It made a really good reel. It was like a glow up reel. I looked so much better afterwards. I was so much more confident.
Well, and
But
you can pick up a lot of tips and tricks to do better
yes.
as you and there's a lot of free resources out there. No need to pay for things. Just start paying attention to the accounts that you follow. They'll be dropping different things to just make your life better, make it easier, make you show up better. I mean, there's tons of little stuff out there.
And there's baby steps. Maybe you're not talking into camera, but you're putting your phone off to the side and you're doing a time lapse and you're kind of like dipping your toe in. Maybe you're not doing selfies, but you're hiring a professional photographer to come and do a branding photo shoot of you out on the farm or in your boutique or whatever it is that you're doing. And you're getting so that at least you're in the content, whether it's a professional photo, whether it's, you're seating a row and you put your phone out and you make that video and you create a reel. Like, yes, I want you to talk into camera. I want you to get to that stage. But if you aren't even showing up anywhere, then let's baby step our way in until you feel comfortable. Create some B-roll reels, do things like that so that you're at least showing up, because it is so important that you are showing up in your content.
That's something that I feel like a lot of businesses miss is what problem are you solving and what makes you different than XYZ down the road? And you are one of the biggest factors of what sets you apart. And people need to see you. They need to see you and know you. And you can't do that without showing up.
Well, I feel like that wraps things up perfectly. If you want to leave your own question to have us answer it in the hot seat on a future episode, check out the link in our show notes.
I know we didn't get to every single question today. We did try to combine. We still have some more. We are working our way through them. There will be another episode coming up like this. Thank you guys for being here. This was such a fun episode.
This was good. Thank you for listening to this episode. We know there are only so many hours in the day, so we're honored you choose to spend some of your time with us. If you're one of the many rural women entrepreneurs who are struggling to find true community and step-by-step support that actually moves the needle in your business, join our signature group coaching program, the Workhorse Collective. You can find more information in the show notes of today's episode.
Together, we've set out to support and connect with women in rural business. If you found this episode valuable, we'd love it if you'd share with another woman in your circle. It would also be incredibly helpful if you would take a moment to leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and we'll catch you next time on the Workhorse Podcast.